The number of times Family Guy has made fun of religion is countless. The writers honestly don't care about what people think. They pretty much joke about everything, and religion wasn't something that could escape either. This episode kicks off with another Christmas, where Peter and Jesus run into each other at the mall again.
Is that Jesus?
Oh yeah, wow.
Now, if you think about it, it is technically Jesus' birthday.
I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday.
And because of his ongoing beef with God, since in almost every episode God is busy hanging out with his girlfriend, Peter decides to throw him a birthday party.
Okay, but $5 limit. Why don't we just say no gifts?
So they all gather to figure out how to celebrate Jesus' birthday. But when Quagmire starts talking about what kind of women Jesus might like to invite, Jesus starts stammering and saying weird stuff. That is when everyone realizes Jesus is a virgin.
Come back to your house and sit on your butt.
Wait a minute, Jesus, have you ever been with a woman? Are you a virgin?
Yeah, I am.
Even though his best friend is a prostitute. So the birthday party turns into Peter trying to help Jesus lose his virginity. Like, was there seriously no one else in the world? But of course, Quagmire is the expert here.
How you girls doing on popcorn?
I'll take some.
Here you go.
Anyway, when Jesus keeps getting ghosted on his dates, one of them because he mentioned living in Israel, and in others, he just said strange things to the girls.
So where do you live?
Everywhere, all places, hopefully inside you.
Peter and the gang try to set him up with someone on Facebook. That fails too.
A lot of POV stuff.
Yeah, I like to pretend it's mine down there what's doing all the slapping.
Oh my.
So Lois, who thinks she understands women well, tries to help Jesus. And this leads to Jesus wanting to lose his virginity with Lois.
What? I am outraged! But probably not as outraged as the 10 million Christians watching.
You're probably thinking, wait, Peter was okay with this? Yup. In exchange for Jesus giving him a foot massage chair, Peter agrees. This definitely sounds like the kind of episode where Lois should divorce Peter.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Things get even weirder when Joe says if Jesus sleeps with his wife, he'll ask him to give his legs back.
Hey, do you think if I let Jesus sleep with Bonnie, he'd give me back the use of my legs?
Damn!
But Peter changes his mind when he realizes this isn't the first time Jesus has pulled the I'm a virgin card to sleep with someone's wife.
Jesus ain't no virgin. He did the same thing to me last Christmas.
He what?
This episode really does take every possible chance to joke about Jesus. In the end, Peter races to the hotel to stop them, but when he gets there, he finds out that Lois didn't go through with it because she's always loyal to Peter.
I couldn't go through with it. Our marriage is too important to me.
Which is precisely her mistake. And to cover up what he did, Jesus tells them it was all a divine test. Classic move religious folks always pull to get away with this stuff.
Bravo, Peter. Lois, seems like you folks learned the lesson I intended.
So that was a lie.
The story in this episode starts with Brian meeting a super religious girl at an animal shelter, and they start dating.
Well, I'm going to a concert this Friday. Wanna come? It's at Quahog Church.
Church?
You might wonder, how on earth is this even possible? Brian hates religion and religious people and can't stand them, let alone date one.
What?
Well, this girl knows exactly where to scratch a dog, if you catch my drift.
There's your spot. Sorry, I interrupted you.
They even go to a gospel concert together. What the hell is that, right? And Brian spends the whole time pretending to be a Jesus lover. By the end of the concert, the girl suggests they go back to her place, and when Brian brings up the topic of sex, she says she believes in no sex before marriage. She even has a tattoo saying that.
And then we'll have sex?
Sex? Brian, I'm Christian, and no good Christian believes in sex before marriage.
At this point, Brian snaps and goes on a rant about how Christianity is the worst thing that ever happened to his country and people.
Stop it. Get some help.
And he wishes he could go back in time and fix the problem from the root. After thinking for a second, he realizes that with Stewie's time machine, he can totally do that. So they go back to 3080 in Israel. all Brian has to do now is outcompete Jesus when he's trying to convert people to his religion. So when Jesus turns water into wine, Brian sets up a photo booth and brings out some fizzy alcoholic drinks for the crowd.
As my wedding gift, I turn this water into wine.
Amazing!
And I brought hard seltzer in a photo booth.
That's even better.
Hard seltzer has less calories.
And now there's an activity for people who don't like to dance.
Or when Jesus goes up a mountain to preach, Brian goes to a taller mountain and draws the crowd to himself.
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
Jesus gets mad and says he never even wanted to be the Messiah, and he's only doing all this because his dad, God, is making him.
I only do it because my dad makes me.
Wait, Joseph makes you do this?
No, my real dad.
Yeah, by dad he means God because Joseph didn't pass the paternity test.
We have the results, and Joseph, you are not the father.
Yes! 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 I knew it! I knew it! Maureen!
Jesus admits he always wanted to be a stand-up comedian instead of the savior of humanity. Brian encourages him to go for that and ditch the whole Messiah thing. So Jesus decides to talk to his dad first, and we see that no parent in the world, not even God, is happy when their kid wants to become a comedian.
A comedian? How could you do this to your mother? What's next? You don't want to marry your very close cousin?
Of course not. In fact, right now, I'm weirdly seeing a prostitute with the same name as mom.
Emotional, damn it!
After realizing it is pointless to argue, Jesus goes ahead and tells God that, by the way, besides being a comedian, he's also dating a hooker around his mom's age. Turns out, Jesus is a pretty good comedian and gets popular among the people.
You know how there are 7 wonders of the world? Well, turns out they just found an 8th, a Galatian who paid his bar tab.
But he eventually makes one bad joke about the Assyrians, and they crucify him anyway.
What happened? He told a joke about Assyrians on a college campus.
But Brian feels relieved that at least Christianity never comes into existence. So they decide to head back to the present, but there's one thing they didn't predict. If Christianity never existed, then Judaism would be the dominant religion. And when they return, everyone in Quahog is Jewish.
Shalom, Brian. Boy, this town has good medical care.
And of course, Brian hates all the Jewish rules, especially having to walk 5,000 miles to the temple in the afternoon. So they go back in time again to wipe out Judaism too. Stewie gives Moses $20 to make him walk away and not receive the 10 Commandments. When they return to the present, they finally get what they wanted, a world without religion.
Good job!
But this time, God himself steps in and threatens them to go back and fix everything because Einstein and Carl Sagan tried this before.
Package for Brian and Stewie?
Yeah, that's us.
What did you do, you little twerps?
Oh my God, God!
Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it,
It was
fix
his
it,
idea,
fix
it's
it!
not...
And he had to force them to put things back in order. So Brian and Stewie have no choice but to obey, and everything goes back to how it was. The next one kicks off when Peter's dad, Francis, a hardcore Catholic, decides to stay at Peter's house for a few days. Now, if we remember how much he hates other religions, we can already guess the disaster that's coming because Lois is Protestant, and Francis has never been able to accept that.
He would prefer it if you did not join us. You being a Protestant and all. He said it's okay if you sit at the kids' table.
The moment Francis arrives, he wastes no time telling Lois he still can't stand her.
Lois, I haven't changed a bit, you lying bitch.
At dinner, he refuses to sit at the same table as her, but that doesn't stop him from eating all the food she made. Classic. As Francis stays longer, his meddling only gets worse. He believes that sprinkling holy water on a baby will save them from hell.
The fuck is wrong with you?
So he insists on baptizing Stewie.
You really think that splashing magic water on Stewie will keep him out of hell?
What's that kind of talk or you'll get your heathen head smacked?
Well, that's very Christian.
He even suggests putting a crucified Jesus statue right in front of the kitchen. I mean, seeing a bloody man on a cross every time you enter the kitchen can't be good for your appetite, right? Francis doesn't give up though, and without telling Lois, he takes Stewie to get baptized. But when they arrive, the priest says, "Sorry, can't do it today. The holy water is contaminated." You might be wondering, how can holy water get contaminated? Well, apparently one of the bishops didn't wash his hands after using the bathroom. Makes sense, right? But Peter's dad doesn't care and decides to baptize Stewie himself.
There's no such thing as tainted holy water. Come on, we'll do it ourselves. Stewie Griffin, I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And Space Ghost.
What are you doing? Oh my god, this is almost as bad as my bath with Kathy Bates.
Too bad he didn't listen to the priest because the next day Stewie gets super sick and has to be quarantined.
Oh my god!
When Lois asks the doctor what's wrong, he miraculously says it is probably from the baptism. When Lois finds out Peter went behind her back and had Stewie baptized, she is furious and tells him he doesn't have to follow everything his dad says. He can choose his own religion.
Now, what about your religious beliefs, huh? You have a choice, you know.
I do?
And predictably, Peter isn't about to pick something strict, so it takes him less than 5 minutes to land on Mormonism. Why? Because they can have multiple wives. Seems like the perfect religion for someone like Peter.
Peter, what are all these women doing in our living room?
Lois, I took your advice and picked a new religion. I'm gonna be a Mormon.
A Mormon? Are you sure?
Come on, nailing a different wife every night, that's a no-brainer.
But then he realizes they're not allowed to drink alcohol and boom, his Mormon phase is over in about 2 minutes.
What the fuck?
Next, Peter meets with a Hindu monk who explains that the red dot on his forehead is a religious symbol, not a laser gun. He goes on to say it is actually a getaway to enlightenment and happiness, but Peter's dumb reply gets him kicked out instantly.
Look out!
What are you doing?
Oh, I thought that dot on your head was from a sniper rifle.
Peter, this spot is a sacred adornment. It's a portal.
A vagina?
Get out.
Toward the end of the episode, it seems like Peter's finally found his religion. According to Francis, Peter should worship someone who's always been there for him in tough times, so Peter makes his decision. Yep, the only person who's been with him through thick and thin deserves to be worshipped. The Funds. Yeah, from Happy Days.
How? Hold on, bro. How?
The next day, Peter builds a church for himself and anyone who wants to worship the Funds. Pretty soon, the place is packed with a bunch of people who also want to follow the Funds. If you're wondering how people can believe this stuff, just take a look around, right? As expected, Peter, the founder of Fondsism, is also the one preaching. I mean, how bad do things have to be for you to sit through one of Peter's sermons?
Please rise. Now sit on it. The Fonds be with you.
And also with you.
Let us
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Now that Peter's chosen his own religion and it isn't Catholicism, Francis is even angrier. He says Fondsism isn't a real religion, just a bunch of singing and storytelling. Brian steps in to point out that's literally the definition of a religion, just a new kind that's exploiting people in a different way. Don't hold me accountable for Brian's words.
Why? I agree with you. All Peter's done is found another way to exploit people's ignorance, and that's just wrong.
But Peter doesn't back down because now he has the power to control people through his new religion. In the end, though, the Church of Fonds closes for good because all its followers get pulled into other religions named after cartoon characters. What shocks us at the very end is that while the church is gone, Fondsism isn't. The newest member? Francis. Yep, drove everyone crazy, and in the end, he wasn't even a Christian anymore. God help us all. Peter and his family go on a trip and settle into a room, but as soon as they turn on the TV to watch Tom Tucker like they do in every episode, does this TV have any other channels? They realize a storm has started outside and the power goes out.
All right, well, TV's out, no internet. Let's all just go to the bathroom and pretend we can't hear each other go.
The rain is so heavy outside that it is causing a flood, but everyone agrees to leave Brian out in the storm because they can't remember where they last put him. Poor dog, he's part of the family in one episode, and in another they leave him to die in a storm.
Guys?
Anyway, now that the power's out and they can leave the room, they have to find a way to keep from fighting and stay entertained.
Well, maybe there's something in this drawer we can all play with. Hair gel, condom.
Peter grabs a book from one of the hotel's rooms. The Holy Bible, he says. Of course, he means the Bible. So the only thing left for them to do is sit together and read the Bible. Peter starts from the beginning with the creation of Adam and Eve, who we see as Peter and Lois back when God made the Garden of Eden. Everything's going great, and they're supposed to live in paradise forever.
I think the leaf over my balls is poison ivy.
But one day, God tells him he's going to his girlfriend's art gallery because if he doesn't, he's a jerk. He leaves Adam and Eve with 2 rules. Don't have sex with squirrels and don't eat the apple.
All right, before I go, I got 2 rules. No putting your penis in the gopher holes, and no apples.
But as soon as God leaves, we all know what's gonna happen. Quagmire shows up as a snake and convinces Lois to eat the apple with her feet. Even in heaven, Quagmire can't let go of his foot fetish. When God comes back from the art gallery, he sees how much apple they've eaten and kicks them out of Eden, right into Florida. But what happens next? Peter says they start repopulating, probably with their siblings, parents, or all of the above. Basically, it is all messed up and somehow kids come out of it.
Okay, but then what did they do?
They had kids too.
With who?
They were fruitful.
With who?
Well, the girls with either their brothers or their fathers, and the boys with either their sisters or their mothers.
That's disgusting.
No, Meg, that's the Bible.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
The Bible stories continue, and Peter talks about the old guy, Noah, who God tells to build a boat to survive the flood.
Noah, I want you to build an ark.
Right.
Noah goes to his wife and tells her he is stopped taking his lithium, a modification for bipolar disorder, and now wants to build a boat for God. Honestly, there's probably a connection there, but I'll let you decide.
They're fighting again.
Shh, if you're quiet, you can hear every 5th word.
Always.
Eventually, the boat gets built and animals come in pairs to board it. Noah pairs lions with baby gazelles, crocodiles with sea monsters that eat sea creatures, and Christian Bale with an annoying cameraman.
Hey, Christian, looks like I'm rooming with you.
Oh, good for you.
Perfect.
Now, after being stuck at sea for days, Noah turns into a total jerk, and the family's daughter gets kidnapped by a giant bird. Finally, they reach land. Peter says the Bible even talks about Noah's sons marrying their mother, and Noah's totally cool with it. In fact, he stays best friends with her forever.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
And on their wedding nights, he dances either with his wife, who is now his son's wife too, or maybe with his son in his second marriage to his own daughter. Honestly, I don't understand any of this. Peter believes that God only floods places where there's gay sex, and he promises God that if he stops this rain right now, he'll never do it again. But Stewie interrupts with,
"Let it pour."
The last story Peter shares is about a week before Easter. Jesus and Mary Magdalene are painting Easter eggs. Mary says they can eat the eggs together tonight, but Jesus has to go out with his friends and will do anything to make it to tomorrow's hangout, unless someone arrests him and nails him to a cross.
Are you sure you don't want to change? That's the same robe you wore to the leper colony. I don't know, maybe throw it in the dryer at least?
So Jesus goes out with his friends for dinner, obviously the Last Supper, and Judas sells him out for a bag of silver coins and 2 tennis balls.
This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Ugh.
Back at the Last Supper, Jesus only orders some bread and wine. When the waiter stretches out his hands to describe how big American pizzas are, everyone mimics the gesture, and boom, that is how the famous picture gets taken.
Remember the Pizza Hut Bigfoot pizza from the 90s? That thing was huge. I mean, it was like this big.
When the bread arrives, Jesus tells his followers to eat it like it is his body. One of the disciples asks which part of the body, and Jesus says he is not sure, but to kneel while they eat it. In the end, the guards come to arrest Jesus and take him away. As soon as Peter finishes reading the Bible, the storm stops, and they can all go home after mocking every single story in it. The story of the other episode kicks off with Francis, Peter's dad, retiring, and they're planning to throw him a retirement party. If you didn't already know, Francis is a super devout Catholic who's told Lois over and over again that she's just a Protestant whore. He even wrote that on their wedding car, saying Peter should have married a Catholic woman.
It's pretty difficult to put into words how disgusted I am, how depressed I am.
Whenever we see Peter's dad in an episode, you know some religious disaster is about to happen, and this episode is no different. When Francis gets up to give his retirement speech, he says, "Jesus is probably happy with you, but I hope you all burn in hell for retiring me."
Jesus loves you. But in my eyes, you're a bunch of sinners and slackers who have forced a hard-working old man to retire.
But Lois isn't the only one in the house Francis has a problem with. He doesn't get along with the kids either because they haven't been baptized. According to him, they're either going to burn in hell or, at best, end up in limbo.
You know what you're doing in there, and it's a sin. If you ever do it again, you'll burn in hell.
And Francis doesn't even have a great relationship with Peter either. So Peter takes this chance to try and fix their father-son issues from childhood, insisting that Francis move in with them. Francis, of course, uses every opportunity to insult Peter's wife.
You're a good woman, Lois. Perhaps you won't burn in hell after all. Maybe you just go to purgatory with all the unbaptized babies.
But there's one person in the house who not only doesn't have a problem with Francis, but actually likes him. That is Stewie because, well, he is already a fan of hating religion. If you pay attention, you'll notice how much Stewie is like his grandpa, constantly wanting to torment everyone.
I adore this man!
Anyway, Francis' reign of terror has just begun. He drags Chris out of the bathroom, claiming what he's doing in there is a sin and that God is watching him.
God's watching me do number 2? Oh man, I'm a sinner and God's a pervert.
Chris was literally just using the bathroom and he has no idea what Francis is talking about, probably because his intestines were about to explode.
Open the door! Open it, I say!
Sorry, Grandpa. You might want to give that a minute or two.
I know what you're doing in there, and it's a sin.
Then, when he sees Meg come home with a boy from school, he tells her that boy is going to rip her heart out and she'll burn in hell.
You weird, buddy.
Eventually, Francis disappears from the house without saying a word, right while Peter and Chris are hanging out at a baseball game, and Peter was hoping to bond with him. Then, in the middle of the night, Peter gets a call from the police telling him Francis has been arrested.
Peter, calm down. It's his first night of retirement. He's probably out enjoying himself.
He's in jail.
Nice.
Turns out, Francis snuck into the factory where he used to work, not to steal anything, but because he wanted to work there again.
I want to work. I want my job back.
But Dad, you're retired.
I'd rather be dead.
I got you, homie.
The fact that Francis chose the factory over him really upset Peter, but he doesn't give up and insists that the best situation is for them to have a job together.
Lois, you're a genius. And now give me a hug before I give you a knuckle sandwich.
So Peter takes Francis to his workplace and forces him to assemble Joel parts. Francis, being the hard worker he's always been, does an amazing job, probably because he spent his entire life prioritizing work over everything, including his son.
We should sell you to the circus, you freak.
The factory boss ends up promoting Francis to supervisor, and he immediately starts bossing everyone around, saying they won't get hired unless they become employee of the week, which is basically Jesus Christ. Peter complains and Francis straight up fires him.
Case, I'm suing you for sexual harassment.
Quick reminder, Chris still hasn't gone to the bathroom yet.
What do you think you're doing, lad?
Nothing.
Peter, desperate to prove to his dad that he's a good person, goes all the way to Italy, kidnaps the Pope, and brings him home.
You sure this is Boston?
Yeah, it's Boston. See, look, there's Harvard.
That's just a barn.
Ooh, someone went to Yale.
When the Pope sees Peter's family, he says Peter is a good man and it doesn't matter what Francis thinks. So by the end of the episode, Peter brings the Pope to his dad, and after hearing what the Pope has to say, Francis realizes he's been wrong this whole time. Though not about Peter, but about the Pope. Yeah, this old man isn't given up that easily. In the end though, he admits that Peter is his son and that he loves him, even if he's not really his favorite person.
I love you with all me heart.
You do?
Of course. I just don't like you.
For about the first 5 minutes of this episode, I seriously wanted to end my life, not in a simple way, but in a horrifying way, because Peter keeps playing his favorite song from the 60s on repeat for 5 straight minutes.
Don't you know?
Whoa, calm down, Jamal. Don't pull out the 9.
Driving the rest of the family crazy too. But as I continued watching, I realized this wasn't just the first 5 minutes of the episode. The story kept going, and sometimes I even dream about that song. This totally describes what was happening. So Stewie and Brian decide they need to steal that record from Peter no matter what, because they were literally bleeding from hearing it, and they felt like they could die at any moment.
Right, that's it. We gotta do something about this.
Peter loved that record so much that he even took it to bed with him. And by bed, I don't just mean cuddling up and falling asleep. There were other crazy things happening on that bed too. When Peter falls asleep, Stewie and Brian sneak into the room from the ceiling and grab the record right out of Peter's hands. Just imagine what happened the next morning when Peter woke up and realized his precious record was gone. He screams and accuses the whole family.
Who did it?
But no one fesses up. Stewie and Brian were so relieved to be rid of that record that there was no way Peter could find even a tiny piece of it, so he heads out to buy another copy.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
When he walks into the store and meets the seller, he realizes it is none other than Jesus Christ. The seller doesn't believe him at first, but when Peter threatens to take a dump on the other records, he confesses that he is Jesus.
Well, if you're not Jesus Christ, then you won't mind if I pee on these Amy Grant CDs. Don't! Aha! You are Jesus!
Yes.
As Peter starts shouting that this is exactly what the Bible promised about the return of Christ, Jesus says he comes to earth every 1,000 years and there's no second coming.
You're the first person to recognize me in 2,000 years.
Peter invites him over for dinner with the family, but we all know Brian is gonna ask a weird question. So he asks Jesus how we can know he's really him.
How do we know you're really Jesus?
And Jesus starts performing miracles. First, he turns water into ice cream, and then, at Peter's special request, he multiplies Lois's breasts. I mean, with everything in the world Peter could wish for, he chose Lois's boobs. Then we see Jesus trying to go back to his quiet life, but Peter insists he needs to announce to the world who he is.
Boy, you gotta get back out there. Coloring eggs and hiding them for kids.
What, you mean reveal myself?
So they take him out to the people, but no one believes him. However, as soon as he starts walking on water, everyone gathers around and starts shouting that he is Jesus.
And his best pal Peter. Oh, wow.
When he introduces himself, he gets invited to a talk show for an interview. Just imagine something like that in real life. It is totally insane.
Now, who are you?
Jesus Christ.
Who are you?
Jesus Christ.
Who are you?
Jesus Christ!
Now go get him!
Jesus becomes so famous that his picture ends up in magazines. He gets invited to Paris Hilton's parties and even to announce award winners. But when he is about to head back from one of those parties, he decides to take a cow with him, but tells Peter there's no room in the car. It seems like karma comes for everyone, even if you're Jesus Christ, the Son of God.
Hey, you guys mind scooting over a little bit?
Ooh, sorry, Peter. Doesn't look like there's any room.
What do you mean?
Well, there's only one space left, and I promised it to that cow.
This is gonna be so much fun. I'm gonna stick my head out the sunroof and wave my arms and go, woo! I'm in Hollywood!
Now, I'm really mad.
The cops find Jesus half-conscious, saying that the Jews are responsible for all the world's wars. So bitter, right? Thousands of years have passed. When Jesus gets arrested, he calls Peter to bail him out, and when Peter's forced to do it because Jesus throws a flower pot at him from a distance, he frees Jesus. Jesus leaves the earth for another 1,000 years and goes back to God. But before he leaves, he gives Peter a gift. And yeah, we have to endure that horrible song again for a few seconds at the end of the episode.
Although he did give me something right before he disappeared.
What?
Something very special, Lois.
Fuck!
A well a bird. Bird's a word, a well a bird.
So this is a Christmas story that totally takes us back to the good old days when Christmas first happened. The place where Joseph meets Mary. Of course, this story is gonna be told by Peter, so we never really find out exactly what went down.
A story that goes back over 100 years.
Yay, Star Wars!
Now, Chris.
Joseph was a carpenter who meets this super cute girl named Mary, and everyone in town wanted to date her. But Mary believed she should stay a virgin and practice this with her teacher every day.
I do have a very good virginity coach.
No.
Gradually, she starts to like Joseph, but she never lets him get close. One day, she invites him over and drops the bombshell that she's pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
From my finger?
No, you don't understand. God has blessed me with his child.
Not by Joseph, but by God. Joseph, thinking Mary's been messing around with some dude, is totally shocked. But Mary explains that while she was sleeping, an angel from God came to her and said she's gonna carry the Son of God.
But I do have one question. Was he bigger than me?
Bruh, chill.
So she has to be ready for this divine thing. After that, Joseph keeps asking Mary to explain this whole story because it sounds logical when it comes from her, but when he tells his buddies, they all laugh at him.
When you tell me the story, it sort of makes sense. But then when I tell the guys at work, they poke all kinds of holes in it.
Now, Mary and Joseph are on their way to Bethlehem so she can give birth there. Meanwhile, a letter reaches 3 wise men. Seriously, you won't believe who those 3 guys are. Telling them to head to Bethlehem to see the King of Kings, who's gonna be born there. And since one of these wise men's mother-in-law was supposed to be there, they hit the road to Bethlehem.
Hey, isn't your mother-in-law visiting tomorrow?
On the way, when the 3 wise men get to the palace of King Herod, they tell him about the baby that's about to be born, so he decides to kill the baby to stay on top.
Just to be safe, I should probably kill that baby. Then Jodie Foster will love me.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Meanwhile, Mary and Joseph are searching for a place to give birth because every hotel in town is booked. They call the doctor to help deliver the baby, and the doctor mentions that it's only happened once before when a pregnant woman drank alcohol, and her baby was born with issues. But that baby had its own miracles. It could turn everything into poop.
Serious?
Let's get back to the part where the 3 wise men encounter Joseph and Mary. Eventually, the Messiah comes into the picture, and when the King of the Jews attacks them, the Messiah totally wipes them out with his laser-powered airplane. I mentioned Peter's the one telling the story, right? This episode kicks off with Peter, Cleveland, and Joe trying to find God no matter what. But let me backtrack a bit to explain how this all started. Sundays are when Peter and his neighbors and family go to the stadium to watch football, but for the 1000th time, their favorite team loses. When they interview players from the opposing team, they're all thanking God.
I'm here with CJ Spiller. CJ, you ran for 200 yards today. How did you manage that against the Patriots defense?
Well, we just gelled as a team today and was fortunate to come away with the win. All thanks and praise goes to God.
Now, not only has God messed up by making them go to church on Sundays, but he has also caused their favorite team to lose, so they need to find him and teach him a lesson.
How many times is God gonna ruin our Sunday with both church and bad football?
They set off, leaving America and heading to Greece. But they can't find God even in Jerusalem. Like, where else would he be if not there? Then they arrive in India. But when they see the chaos and filth, they're pretty sure that whatever God is, it's definitely not there.
Oh, here's our bus to the airport.
Wow, that was super loud.
So they head back home, and just when Peter is feeling totally hopeless, they encounter death and realize he can take them straight to God. So he kills them first and then takes them to heaven. Once there, the 3 of them meet God, and Peter tells him it is enough. He can't keep making their football team lose. But God is confused. He doesn't care about football at all. He's just thinking about all the kids dying in Africa.
Are you gonna do something about the people dying in Africa?
No, but I'm pretty upset about it.
When Peter suggests that God should focus on saving them, God admits he's just sad about it, but doesn't do anything. As for the football team, God isn't completely innocent either. It turns out that the coach never smiles, even though God has given him 3 Super Bowls, which is why the team keeps losing. If they can't make the coach laugh, God promises not to interfere anymore. So they travel back in time and do every ridiculous thing you can think of to make the coach laugh, even if it means hitting Cleveland in the head with a baseball bat. In the end, the only thing that makes the coach laugh is how pathetic Joe is and how much trouble he has with his daily tasks. Like, what is so funny about this poor guy?
Oh my God, yes!
And when Joe goes on about how he starts every day by soaking himself with water, a smile finally appears in the coach's face. So God keeps his promise and stops messing with Peter's beloved football team. We're kicking off this episode with a Star Trek convention, a sci-fi TV show about space. So Meg was taking a selfie with this guy who looked like an alien, and it turns out he was actually wearing an Orion costume, not pretending to be an alien.
Meg, come take a picture with a space alien guy.
No, Dad, I don't want to.
Come on, it'll be funny.
Now, Meg is stuck at home, totally quarantined, and the only helpful thing Peter did for her, aside from throwing food and milk at her, was bring a TV into a room that only has one channel, and that is all about God. Religious folks always tell you that if you're lonely and feel like nobody loves you, and your parents are throwing food at your face, at least God loves you. They play that card, and that's exactly what happened to Meg. She probably spent her whole sick time glued to that channel.
Me personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
And now that she's better, she talks about God and how he saved her every minute. I guess Francis will finally be pleased with her. Now that she's back on her foot, she thinks it is her chance to introduce God to everyone. But of course, she picks the wrong people for that. Her family. She isn't budging, even when Peter jokingly tells God that if he wants to watch porn, he can come upstairs with him before Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, hey, you want to see a sweet porn website? Follow me upstairs.
But the same guy who cracks jokes like that is the one who threatens Brian when he admits he's an atheist, saying that God is eventually going to come for him. Meg gets totally hyped about it and won't let it go, especially now that Brian's admitted he doesn't believe in God.
You're barking up the wrong tree, Meg. I'm an atheist.
What's that?
I don't believe in God.
She keeps pushing him to convert to Catholicism, and when Brian says there's nothing she can do about it, Meg goes to all the news outlets to tell them Brian's an atheist. When they ask the mayor for his opinion, he says he'd rather have a terrorist among them than an atheist because at least they believe in some kind of God.
I'd rather have a terrorist living in our midst. At least they believe in a God.
After that, Brian becomes the most hated guy in town and everyone jumps at the chance to attack him. He can't even leave his house anymore, but what really bugs Brian is that he can't go to the bar and drink, so he lies to Meg saying he's found faith in God just to get her off his back.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
But that wasn't enough to convince Meg. She pushed Brian to his breaking point, book burning. They started burning books that contradicted God, like Darwin's evolution books. But this is just one of those episodes where Brian convinces someone that God does not exist because if he did, he wouldn't have created Meg to be just like Peter.
Then let me just ask you this. If there were a God, would he have put you here on Earth with a flat chest and a fat ass?
The last episode of today's video starts with Peter's mom passing away, so we see everyone in church where Peter is giving a speech. I don't think I need to mention that he doesn't hold back from saying some pretty disgusting things even at his mom's funeral.
Okay, I will now take questions from the audience. No? None? They don't have to be about my mom.
Right at that moment, Stewie tells Brian that he is glad he isn't feeling anything, and Brian's response really shakes Stewie up. Stewie realizes the truth, and now he can't sleep at night thinking about death. If Brian had known he could say something to Stewie to help him out, he would have done it in the very first episode of Season 1. But this time, it is the opposite. Brian helps Stewie understand the different beliefs about life after death because he isn't the only one struggling to accept it. So the first place they go is a synagogue where the Jews worship. Brian warns Stewie right away that he might not get any answers there. And when they go inside, that's exactly what happens.
So where do Jewish people think they go when they die?
Where do you think we go?
Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Because Stewie tells the rabbi he thinks they're just ignoring their holidays to avoid responsibility. Then they head to a Buddhist temple where Brian says they believe that after death, you come back as an animal. And there's the Catholic angle where some people think that if you believe in Jesus before you die, you go to heaven. even if you're a total jerk, as long as you say that one phrase right before you kick the bucket. When Stewie asks Brian what he believes, Brian, being the real atheist he is, says nothing at all. After you die, everything goes quiet, which totally freaks Stewie out to the point that he decides to end his life so he doesn't have to wait around to die.
Well, I'm not dead, but I do have a boner.
For a second, I felt bad for Stewie, but just for a second. So Stewie tries his hardest to off himself, but at the last moment, when he's about to jump off a building, Brian saves him and convinces him that living isn't so bad after all. This line only works in cartoons.